Welcome back to Potatoes, to episode 5 of Empyrion Galactic Survival in Alpha 6. We're now in 6080995, and it has caused another restart because they've been adding more and more of the NPC characters, which will become traders, but they are not traders as yet. So I have been spending a lot of time in creative mode finishing up my forces. I am currently aboard the cemetery, which you saw me make the creation in the beginning, but I have done quite a number of improvements, including logic circuits, added space for additional ships. The list goes on. So we'll take a look at that as we go through the ship. So we'll start off in the options screen, or the control panel, in the main window. Actually, I just pulled in some more fuel because that's the one downside to this ship. It does burn quite a bit of power, even with the motors turned off, because there's a lot to it. So it will be expensive to run, but it'll be worth it. It's definitely a later game ship. So that said, over back in the main here, you can see actually devices tells us more, because I do have it broken up. 12 ammo boxes, which are all pre-noted as to what your best option to put there, depending upon how frequently they fire and how fast, etc. Followed by 20 cargo boxes. Now these cargo boxes are just generic, the standard cargo boxes for whatever you may find along the way. The reason I say it that way is because I have done additional groups. For example, the, let's see, is it emergency stash? No, quick stash. I have 10 boxes, which are the larger style. They hold nearly twice as many for the block space, but in here you have the one for equipment, ammunition, consumables, weapons, armor, boosts, blocks of various types. And in addition to that, there is also a group which I have named resources, which has basically one of each resource you will gather, with the two of a couple exceptions. Like I did 2 crushed stone, because you'll end up stumbling across that way more than you'll need unless you're building large concrete bases. And then I made additional blocks for oxygen, because oxygen is, after all, life. Now from there, there's also 4 constructors, which again broke down as to what I use them for. You can use them for whatever you'd like, certainly. Put all the doors together, pretty much leave them alone. That's a null group for the most part. And then in the equipment, I have for your armor placement and repairs, because these are powerable, so you can shut them down to help with power when you're not changing your armor. That is why I left them separate. Of course, one food processor, which is at the end of the growth area, the greenhouse. Then I have 8 fridges at the end of that as well, which again I have suggestions for what to put in there, generally what I put in there, as I am collecting and picking things as time progresses forward. Plenty of fuel tanks, still all the tier 1, the smaller tanks. I never did change those around. I would gain a little more, but the required amount, or the maximum amount I should say, is a good number, so we'll leave it at 420,000. On the harvest, again I have separate. That has the mining drill, which we're staring at in the background here in the front. There's 190 lights overall, but you will note that some are active, some are not. There are many switches, which is included with the logic. All of the interior lighting is motion switched. So as you enter a room, the lights go on. As you leave the room, the lights go off. There is an additional switch as well, a fourth switch. I believe I had shown the first three, which I did start on the logic. But the front three were the original ones. As you can see in the front, I have a panel listing what they are. Actually, the lights are probably off. See if we get out of the cockpit seat, the light should turn on. I may have hit the T key, I'm not sure, but yeah, they are all on. But this blue switch here is not on the panel, but that turns on the lamps outside for all of the landing pads, as well as the white lights around the doorways that enter the two hangar bays. And then the other switches, we have one for the guns, one for the engines, and one for the ramps and hangar doors. Give them a new default state to open or close them, whether I am traveling or not. And let's see, go a little further down. I have a number of the medical stations in the medical group. Medic stations are the ones we have always had, but now we have additional healing capabilities between the benches or beds. They both work on the stand and recover, which they have had for a while, but now they have added into some of the tech decos as well. So I spattered 4 of these around, one in each hangar bay and one on each bridge, which will do additional things like heal broken wounds, alien parasite, that can be nice to have, heat stroke and radiation stroke, which is actually the same as the shower, I believe, but a matter of degree. And oh yeah, food and poison food for scanner 3 and 4 are stronger effects for what the shower and toilet do. So I have those separated out as well. Let's see. Of course, the movement block I still have on a switch here, so you can turn it on or off through the control panel. However, the digital switch on the floor next to me here will take care of that, and there's a set of switches in both of the 2 bridges. And let's see, I think that's about it. 52 weapons, which is the maximum amount. Again, the space ones are switched with, I think, that switch there, whereas the main ones are always on for the cannons and the miniguns and the sentry turrets, because those will shoot even on the planet. So with that said, let's do a tour of the ship. Just head outside and do a quick fly around. You know what the basics are, I believe, from the prelude to the season, if you saw that. You can see I have a Lich there, and the 2 sides are basically mirrored. So if there's room here for one, there's room on the other side, so that'll be 4 of our, actually 4 types, but 8 of the 20 ships on board. The skeleton, which is an A1000 alteration. Actually, we should back up, so we'll take a look at the Lich first, as that was an alteration from the Tier 1 starter craft. I added additional stronger weapons, better engines, I think a few storage, plus set it up in hardened steel plate. So we can take a look at the difference here. So here are the 3 versions that led up to the Lich. to start off is the Tier 1 prefab vehicle straight out of the box. Then I updated it, which is what I use early on in the game because it is still lower resources and level required. But as you can see, I've added 3 missiles to it, as well as a few cargo boxes and the like. But then it grew up into what becomes the Lich, which I will be using on the large capital ship, the Cemetery. This is lasers and guided missiles, as opposed to the 15mm Gatling gun and basic rockets, and it is all hardened steel, plus it has additional jets, quicker. I should mention actually that one as well had it as well, but not as many. These have the updated jets as well. And the requirement for this guy is, let's see, I think I still have it, heavy alt, because I haven't saved it as yet. That's prefab altar, which is the basic low-level one, as I had said. It is the heavy tier 1 altar. These are the resources required to make it with the updates. And so that's the Lich, which will be 2 of the 20. As we move down, you see underneath there's a walkway which has automatic lights, as does the main lighting in the greenhouse walkway there. You can see the second bridge with more ships on top, which we'll get to in a moment. In the big front of the wings on top, we have a pair of skeletons, which were an alteration of an A1000. You'll see further notes for that, as well as the original creator, if you take a look at my Steam Workshop. So as you can see for the skeleton, it originally started as the A1000 laser bolt, which was written by, where is it? It's written by McBrutal and Misbehaven. I guess it was a joint effort in that case. But as you can see, it's basically the same shape, though I have altered the colorations a bit as usual, and I changed the weaponry around a bit. It now has 6 of the Gatling guns, and like the original has 4 rockets, but it now sports 4 of the plasma cannons instead of the 4. I think there were only 3 even of the laser cannons on the original one. Then next down the line is a new ship on the roster, one called the Banshee. It is an alteration of the Banshee. Add my color schemes and beefed up the weaponry a bit. As you can see, I have 6 of the Gatling guns across the front, so it does kind of mow down through the enemy, very much like a rake. So for the Banshee, it's actually a takeoff of a creation called the Banshee Medium Fighter. This was created by, who was it created by? Look, it was created by a fella named Mustachio, or Mustachio, I guess it would be said. That is really a very similar model that I've created with my colors as usual. A few additional storage cargo boxes, I'm sure, and increase the amount of Gatling guns to 6. Now that you have seen the Banshee alteration, the next on the list, which we have a pair of these as well, is the Spirit, which was a pirate, IDM pirate alteration, which I have used at least displayed, I believe, in a previous iteration of the ship update. Now, the Spirit was originally modeled after a ship called the IDM SV MED Pirate, without an E, -V1. Now, it was all done in black, had 4 weapons, as you can see, for each of 3 types, though I did remove the 4 of the plasma guns and placed the homing missile, as you can see, on each wing, as I did my colors. It also added a bit of additional armor, as well as some additional storage. And then from the Spirit, that makes up 4 or 8 of the roster on top. And we have 4 more that I have mounted down the center. The Wraith, which was among our first, which we did have back in Season 1. That is very much unchanged, although I do have it set up now to be Alpha 6 ready with an enclosed pressurized cockpit. And here's the Wraith, which is a remodel of the Jupiter Ascending Wraith made by Swaphora. That's available at the workshop, of course. This is the generic here. And of course on this side is my updated version of it, which has nearly twice the amount of fuel and oxygen capacity, as well as some additional guns. The original had 2 each of 4 types of guns. I upped it so it now has 4 plasma, 4 homing rockets, and 4 rail guns, so it's good for a base killer. And it has plenty of storage to take the goods home with it. It is also aerated on the inside. The original was not airtight. Even putting an aeration device in it did not work. And as you can see, it stands 1 higher than the original ship, because I added a few rockets to be the leg stints. If we get inside, I know it's a bit washed out because of all the spotlights. Sorry about that. Inside, I removed a lot of the panels and pulled down doors, which gave me the additional room to aerate the place, so it is completely now climate controlled. And then directly in front of the Wraith is what I call the Spectre, which is a B-2 bomber, armored bomber alteration, which I believe I had covered previously, but here it is again, of the additional weapons that had filled up the vacant slots he provided with us, as well as pressurization of the main cockpit. Actually, I believe the entire cabin is pressurized in the center, though it does have its own 2 additional cockpits on the sides. And we have the Spectre, which is the most brutal of them all. It's the largest of the ships. It was originally crafted, modeled after the armored B-2 bomber, which was made by a player named Meow J. It's part of the J1F series. He's got a whole bunch. But as you can see, there were quite a few spaces left in it for adding additional weapons, which I have done. Also, you can see on the wings, I have extended out the hull plating on the top and bottom, which allow me to place a number of additional storage and cargo containers along the wings. I believe some RCS as well, so it's actually more agile now than it was over the original. Plus, it has the maximum amount of weapons carryable by a small vessel. The only thing that would be additional or could be added in addition is the small vessel missiles, but I have the homing missiles, so there's really no need for that. I've also enclosed the cabin and ventilated it, so it is now climate controlled. Now that you've seen Spectre, we will move forward down the center of the ship. We have the ghoul, which again you have seen in a previous clip, I believe, in another episode. This was the takeoff of the ore beetle ship, as you saw in the clip that I will show you now. The ghoul is a rework of the ore beetle mini factory, which was originally crafted by Super Killer. This one I have not altered nearly as much as many of the others. It is basically just a color reworking and some additional fuel and cargo on the inside, but the cockpit itself looks almost identical. You can see the aerator on the floor there because the cabin is fully pressurized for 6.0. And then the final ship that I have on top was one that I have created fairly recently, actually. I was messing around with some of the so-called flying small vessel bases. Really all they have is a couple of additional constructors in them. So I have that one in the front. As you can see, it's very much like being inside a greenhouse. You can see pretty much all the way around you from the inside. That I created on its own recently, and here it is. And we have the small mobile base vampire, which is basically a glass bubble with as many of the crafting capabilities a small vessel can carry. Has 2 entrances in the back, as well as some armament just for immediate protection, namely 6 Gatling guns and 4 of the homing missiles. As you can see from inside, it's very viewable, so get it on a mountain peak or something, it would be a decent mobile base. And now you have seen the entire front or top side of the ship. So we'll back up a bit down the center. Bit of a reflection right now, unfortunately, but still see the overall layout. Because down in the back are 2 landing bays, pretty much finalized up as well. On the one side we have the zombie, which is a battle tank made originally from the tank. Take a look at the alterations I've done there, as well as making it 6.0 ready with an enclosed cabin. So for the zombie, I basically use the Thunder Tank HV, except I aerated it and added 4 more turrets for the 4 minigun turrets, as well as an additional Gatling gun. There were only 5 on the default, and I made it with 6. And then I also created these little bugs, which are an idea model kind of after the looter, but I really made these more from scratch. It's just like the open cockpit, gave them minor weaponry. I think they've got about a dozen or so storage, so they have ample storage for their size, but they're fairly small and light. I have 2 of those on either side. The bug is one that I put together on my own. It was actually modeled after the looter, which is just a little level 7 craft with an engine in each direction and I think 2 Gatling guns. I added 2 more homing rockets, which make it a little tougher, but it's still pretty tiny. I think it has, 8 storage for the size? 6, actually. So it's fairly tiny. And from there, we can just move around to the other side. The lights are already on from us being nearby. On this side, as you can see, I do have 2 additional bugs. Actually, you can see above where I place the new medical stations. There's also 2 kind of behind the offline protection there as well. But we have the rot, which is an alteration of the ladybug. Now the rot, as you can plainly see, is a rework of the ladybug. Basically, I just changed the color, and I also added a few additional pieces of armor. As you can see, the back is closed in, for example, and it is hardened steel, so it's a little higher on the resources. However, it's much stronger when I take it into a PvP area. And behind the rot, we have the ghost, which is basically my alteration of the tier 4 ship that is provided in the game with us. A few additional weapons. And here's the ghost. In front of us right now is a default tier 4 prefab hover vessel. And the ghost I redid, as you can see. I changed the weapons around a little bit, so there are now 3 weapons, 1 of each type. Also added some storage and additional armor. The storage actually is underneath the extra layer of armor, so there's still only 1, as well as, of course, my coloration. And then the last of the ships on the roster is also on this harvest side, is the mummy, which is the one that I created, which I believe I showed some crafting footage in the last episode. The only slight difference I have done here for the mummy was a slight alteration of the windows, so you can see out a little bit better without being obstructed. And then there's the mummy, which is my own creation. It's basically the same one that I've had up for a couple weeks now, except I have expanded the windows a little bit so they're larger, slightly more unobtrusive view, and I added a pair of plasma turrets just to give it some defense. So now the only ship that I have in my fleet that is undefended is the small ladybug, simply because of how small it actually is. So now, after the Origins series, the decks feel empty because they're all put away. There are some additional things to remember, though, namely how we got here. You can see the cemetery, or excuse me, the graveyard hanging in the air over there. It's the basic tier 2 ship, which I had redone as well for Alpha 6 to have atmosphere as well as the medical facilities. So this is the graveyard, basic tier 2 capital ship, although I've altered it to give it atmosphere as well as the medical requirements that are now included in Alpha 6. So that's where we end up on the graveyard. That's basically the tier 2 ship, as I said. Alter a bit for my colors. Added the medical stuff, as well as a number of drills. You'll note there is also a mining drill aboard, so we can sit in the safety of our atmosphere and mine asteroids fairly earlier on. Though I say earlier, but the truth is it is now listed as level 20 required in order to finish spawning it. However, the requirements for the resources are lower because I kept with standard steel blocks and windows instead of armored. So there's the beginning starter ship that we will be using first when we can go live with the playthrough. Now, the other things that I had been doing, a little experimentation here and there, decided to add a walkway underneath the deck here. These are not in the way of the ships that land, as you can see by the markings on the paint. Works on both sides. I set them up upside down so the air would flow. If they were smooth, flush with the deck, it actually blocks the passage of the atmosphere underneath, so you would not get the protection from the cold weather outside. The other thing that I have not completed as yet will be to enclose the engines a little better. Did some testing and they tend to get blowed up awful soon, so I think that's a matter of just a thin layer for visibility, but I'd rather have them encased and safe, as well as the fuel tanks as well are rather combustible, so and partway through I decided, as I was moving up front, the back is now enclosed on motors. I haven't finished the front, but I expanded the greenhouse area as well, so it goes all the way across, all the way a width of 5, which incurred additional lighting requirements up top, so I split it up that way. There we have that. Well, so here's the ship overall. I've put them away. You can kind of get a better appreciation for the actual size when outside and underneath. As walking underneath it actually takes, 30 seconds or so as I'm chattering along, just walking underneath the thing. I did enclose the engines as well, so it should be a bit more durable. We'll do a bit more testing. As usual, I reserve the right to change it. That's the nature of the beast. But I think that will have to be okay. It actually is still slightly visible from the flares because they're large enough with the big engines. So other than that, it's all buttoned up and automatic lights and like that are doing their stuff. I think that will just have to do it. As you know, I know that I'm okay. It's just the world that's all wrong. But I don't think the ship in this case. I thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take care.